GridWhale is a rapid application development platform for building awesome websites. Today I want to show off some of the applications that we've built with GridWhale and talk about some of the internals of the platform that make it really easy for you to create these kinds of apps. All right, well, the first thing I want to show you is an application that we've built called Temporal Value. This is a time and billing application. It's a full-blown application. And you can see that it's got a real UI. I can create new items for expenses, for time and billing expenses. I got my list of clients that I bill, that I listed here, and I can create add new clients, whatever. I can create an invoice. So let me just create an invoice here and pick a client to bill. I've got a whole bunch of different fields I can pick, and it creates a bunch of items, and then here's a nicely formatted invoice. I can of course print this invoice, so now that I can just send it to the printer or whatever, or save it as PDF, whichever. I can even you can see that it's got a little graphic here from my company. I can obviously edit that. Let me just, in fact, that's probably the old logo. Let me put in a new one. So I can just drag and drop some image from some website, and then there it goes. It gets updated. Now, of course, the old invoices don't get updated because hey, they've already been created. But I can just start again. Try a new invoice. It's the same client, and here we go. Perfect with the new logo. So you can see this is a real blown application, a full blown application. It's got all the user interface. It's got all the storage, because obviously this stuff has to be stored in some backend database. And this is all displayed through just a normal web browser. So this is just a standard web application from the point of view of the user. But of course, behind the scenes, to actually create this application, we've had to write a GridWhale program. And GridWhale makes it really, really easy to create those kinds of applications. Temporal Value is probably one of the more complicated applications, but it's much easier to do something like that in GridWhale than in some kind of competing technology. Let me show a little bit about why that's the case. Let me start with just a Hello World program. So this is just a simple Hello World program in the IDE, the integrated development environment of GridWhale. So everything in GridWhale is hosted in the cloud. The development environment is all in the cloud. There's nothing to install. You don't have to worry about whether it's got this or that library. It's all in there. If just by typing in some code, this is a code called a gridlang, which is just very similar to Python, but is typed so that just to make it a little bit easier for developers. But it's a very simple language, and you can see that for a simple Hello World program, it's not a lot of code. I'm going to show you the Hello World program. I'm going to run it, and all it does is this is just a normal web page, and it's just displaying just some text in a normal web page, centered. Hey, centering a div, not trivial, but hey, pretty easy in GridWhale. It reacts to clicks, to events. So if I click, I can flip it between these two. So a real interactive website. That's just like the basis for almost any kind of application. So let's show a little bit about how that's done. Like I said, it's all done through this bit of code. Here in this little piece here, I've created a control. So all the user interface in GridWhale is just based on these standard controls. And there's a whole bunch of different kinds of controls. There's list controls, there's canvas controls, there's text controls, whatever. And so this I just created a simple text control. I set some of the properties on that control. So here's the text for that control. Here's the alignment, center in the middle. Some font size. I could set color. I could set background color. I could set hover state. All this other stuff. There are all these properties that I could set. But again, very easy. And then the other cool thing about GridWhale is, just like Visual Basic or some of these other old school rapid application development platforms, you can just attach events to these controls, and when those events happen, in this case on click, it'll run this bit of code, and just right then and there, you're just changing the text from hello world to goodbye, or vice versa. And then once you've created the control, you show it and you run. Here's the main event loop. And that's it. I mean, that's your whole application. Now, of course, behind the scenes, a whole bunch of things are happening, right? I mean, all this is running on the server. The user interface is getting remoted to some browser. There's some bit of, code, JavaScript code on the browser that's rendering these controls the way that the program wants it to. When the user clicks here in the browser, there's some JavaScript code in the browser that sends a remote message to the server, tells the server the event happened. That event goes into some queue and it gets, eventually surfaced in this on-click event. So just by writing this simple program, the GridWhale infrastructure has done this basically converted into this client-server program, this distributed system, very, very easily. You didn't have to write a front end and a back end. You didn't have to, worry about deploying this or deploying that. Everything's standard, and everything's built in. And the same thing is true for storage. That's kind of user interface. I'm going to show you something slightly more complicated than Hello World. This is a simple database, just a simple CRUD database, a create, update, delete database, and all it does is here's the record where I have defined the record with just 3 fields, ID, name, and age. I'm storing it in some table which I've specified to be stored in some PostgreSQL database, which again is just kind of built in part of the server. This is all I need to do to tell it to store it in a SQL database as opposed to in some NoSQL database or wherever else. And then I create a bunch of controls, and then when there's actions like someone clicking the edit button, I do some stuff. So let's just show you this app, and you can see I've already got a bunch of things here. If I can edit one of these things, change it. That updates, of course. I can create a new one, whatever, and it just gets updated, and all the storage, is handled under the covers. I'll show you the little bit of code that it does when we actually do a create. So here's the, I'm sorry, not that one. That's the edit. Here it is. Create. When the create button gets clicked on the on action, I bring up a dialog box, and the dialog box just like takes in the record, and so it knows what fields to display. And then I do an insert, a table, dataset.insert of the new record, and this represents that table, that database table, up here that I created and I put in PostgreSQL, and that's it. That's it. Now you notice one thing. I've inserted into the table, but hey, how does the UI know that it needs to get redisplayed? Well, that's easy. Here in the when I create the UI when I create a table UI, I connect the table UI to the table data set, and then under the covers again, GridWhale just whenever there's a change to that data set, it signals the UI, the user interface, and the user interface refreshes. And so this kind of one line of code, and we have this user interface that's fully responsive. Now the cool thing about this is, let me just make sure this is actually shared. I think this is a shared, yep. So the cool thing about this is that this works even for multiple users. So let me go back to another browser. This is a totally separate browser, so it's going to kind of pretend to be a different user. I'm going to run this over here. Let's see if this works. And sure enough, sure enough, here's the exact same database. It's a totally different browser. This browser could be on the other side of the world. It doesn't really matter. Let me show it. And whenever there's a change here, I can go create another one, and it automatically updates on the other side. So immediately, just with that simple application, we've created this shared database system, globally available. You can imagine that GridWhale under the covers can do whatever it needs to do to scale up the number of clients, even though the database itself is in a single place. the number of clients connecting to that database can each be on a separate node, a separate data center. They can be wherever, and the platform is responsible for making sure that they all communicate, that it all works, and that it all scales. So again, with very, very simple, very little bits of code, you can see this is only about 65 lines of code. I've got a fully functional, scalable database, with like a pretty cool UI. So that's that's GridWhale. I can show you a couple of other simple things. This is a sketch pad. Again, pretty much what you would expect, but all based on the same principles. There's this is a canvas control. It reacts to events. And stores the result of the event in some data set. That this again is shareable. If I've done it correctly, let me make sure. So again, this is like shared state, and multiple people can. Let me pick a different color here. And so just like the CRUD database, but just slightly more complicated, you can do kind of whatever you want. This is let me just show off some other applications. This is a notepad or a note-taking application. This is what I use internally, kind of to take notes, collect my design notes about GridWhale. I've got this other application. There's another GridWhale application called Photon Sky. This is basically just a planetarium type software. It shows you how the graphical abilities of GridWhale let you do some pretty cool things. This is all based on some just star atlas, just some collection of stars. I can show more stars here. So then I can of course zoom in almost as far as I want. This is I forgot exactly how many million stars we've got in the database, but there's a ton of them, which is why you zoom into almost any piece of sky and you'll see a ton of them. We've got a chess game, which again pretty standard, but with GridWhale pretty easy, and you can do all the interactivity and all that. This you can imagine that you could play a game together. So GridWhale is just this really, really powerful rapid application development platform that just lets you do all these pretty cool websites, but it makes it really, really easy to do, and that's I think where the magic comes in, and so that's what we're working on. This is obviously, like any platform, a work in progress. There's a ton of things that we haven't yet added to the platform. But the infrastructure is all there, the core systems all work, and we're really just excited about keep adding to the platform and making it more and more powerful to be able to do all the kinds of things that you want to do. Thanks very much.